Hey guys, we're back again this week. We're going to be looking at something that we have not looked at properly in, I want to say, a couple of years at least, with a naval subject this week, as opposed to the ship kit we looked at last time. This week's kit is Dragon's 1/350th German Z-39 destroyer. Let's open her on up and take a look. So, first up, we've got several frets of photo etch for various detail parts, which hopefully will show up on camera. But it includes all the main aerials and the stack and various other detail parts, including radars and some of the gun shields. We also, before I forget, get a nice little fret of 350th scale figures, obviously all our decals and markings, and a sheet of flag decals, albeit slightly curled. Interesting enough, it does include the appropriate markings to build the Z-39 after she transfers to U.S. service following the war. So that's a nice and neat inclusion and an interesting bit of history. So next up, we've got a fret for some of the superstructure as well as our smokestacks and various other little odd and end parts for various components building up the structure. And hopefully this will show up again. Wish I had a little bit better camera for this, but there's a surprising amount of detailing on all of these structure parts. Hopefully we'll be able to be made out. Continuing on, some of these sprues come in multiples, so we'll only be looking at one. We got some of the odd and end parts for the rescue boats, which are surprisingly well done in 350th, and the amount of detailing on them is quite nice. And some other odd and end detail parts for various components, wheels and what have you, for various components of the ship. Moving on, we've got various secondary gun mounts, anti-aircraft guns, and the like. Again, once you add the photo etch to these, they will look fantastic. Next up, a sprue of aerials for all the antennas and masts. I would definitely say be very careful with these, as they are very fine and thin, and while properly scaled, you're going to have a bit of a challenge getting them off the sprue without breaking them. So that's something to be aware of and be careful with. Moving on, another sprue of armaments, including the torpedo launchers, which are very nicely done, and I'm wishing the camera would better show these off. But in addition to this, we got various components for building them up and detailing them, as well as some additional side parts, anchors, what have you. Alright. Now, moving on, we get two more sprues for the single turrets. Again, not a whole lot I can add here. Hopefully it will show up. Would be nice if the set did come with some metal barrels, just to add that little bit extra, as in 350 scale, I'd say it is still worth it to go aftermarket barrels. Once you get down to 700, you get unless it's something like a battleship main gun, I'd say you get diminishing returns. And last up for the armament, we've got the twin turret up front. Again, they did a great job molding it. Obviously, a couple of extra details will make her shine quite nicely. Moving on, we've got the last of the superstructure parts, including the bridge area. All this has fantastic levels of detailing on all these parts. I know I don't do ships a lot, so I do apologize if I'm sounding redundant, but it is all quite impressive and will build up quite nicely. So next up, we've got the parts for the hull, starting with the bottom. And what's nice about how they cut it is it does include the option to do either full hull or waterline. So that's a nice inclusion with how they did it. What's more, since it fell off, they did include a little guard for your bow. So hopefully yours won't get damaged in transit or while you're working on it. Then lastly, we have our main deck plate, rudders, and our props. Now, with how they did the props, they made it so it's going to be quite a bear to get those out. So that is something to be aware of. You're going to have to think smartly with getting those out. One more fret of figures in 3/50th. And then lastly, we've got our display base, which is a nice inclusion. Personally, I think nice brass one would look the best, but you can probably achieve the faux brass finish with it using metallic paints. Get these back in and we'll dive into the instruction sheet. So this kit is on the complex side, so there's a lot of things you're going to have to do, much like a lot of ship kits, to build this up. More than anything, just take your time. Follow the instructions and make sure you do things right. Just go slow. That's all I can really reiterate. Just go slow, take your time, and don't try to rush it. And you should hopefully not run into any major issues. As I said before, I got a couple different marking options, late war and post-war with the U.S. Most likely, personally, I'm probably going to end up building the U.S. version, just because it's an interesting little bit of history. So overall, it's definitely a complex kit. Definitely one you'll have to take your time with, not rush it, and yeah, definitely an interesting kit. So beyond that being said, I would say if you're more junior modeler, I'd say maybe wait on this one. If you're more advanced, definitely one to consider, as it gives you a lot of breathing room to work with. Only issue would be, I'd say, getting all the antenna or all the wiring done for the mast and what have you. So that was a look at the Dragon 1/350th scale German Z-39 destroyer kit. Interesting little kit with some interesting history to the ship. Until next time.